Hey folks, this is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com. Welcome back. I am pleased to have you join me for the next portion of my interview with Lise Snyderman. Was it at that point then that deciding to leave the world of work happened by necessity?
Do you mean when did the art and creativity come in, or do you mean
No,
when did I leave the world of work? Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I
yeah.
left in 2009. So right before my flare, I
Mm,
actually had to leave work.
I see.
Uh,
I see.
but once I left, I also was struck with a other kind of transformation, more of a spiritual question of who am I? What's my identity?
Yeah,
And as many of us do, right?
yeah.
So, how was I still going to affect change if I was no longer working in a field? So, I was an environmental scientist and
Mhm.
I helped create statewide policy for helping control pollution and problems related to all the development along the coast as an example. And I worked with lots of state agencies with whatever they were doing to also help ensure water quality was protected. So for me, I felt like I was affecting change. Now, right, I'm not doing that and I'm an artist. So I struggled with art being enough. And I really threw myself into creativity. So here's the irony. I'm talking about, this whole thing of when you're in acute stages and you don't create. But I also was in that place where all I could do was create, because that's where the stage went for me, from my body is starting to get better to now I need to nurture this part of me that needs to express. And who knows why that was happening. All I knew is there was a compulsion
Mm,
to get my music out, get my stories, get my art out. And that first is how it played out for me in thriving, was like, first it's persevering and getting through the darkness through creating.
yeah.
And, so many of us in this circle have had conversations about what creativity can do. I interviewed 45 different artists who created to heal. And so many of us said the same thing, which was, number one, that we don't feel like we're in our illness space when we're creating. It takes us out. Even it doesn't mean the illness goes away, but it does mean that we can focus on something other than the illness. And that just, I always think of it like time stops, or, we get into these places. Have you ever done something where you're so immersed where you forget to even do your basic needs, go to the bathroom, have food or drink, because
Yes,
you're just so
absolutely.
immersed?
Yes, in flow,
That's
as it's
Yes,
often called. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And that to me is what creating is, and has been, right? So that place of flow.
Hmm. And it sounds like your relationship with creativity well predates your relationship with dermatomyositis, that you were a creative prior to having chronic illness.
I would call it definitely just in terms of my go-to, but
Hmm.
not my profession. So I was a
Uh-huh.
singer-songwriter
Uh-huh.
before dermatomyositis. Like my first album was 2006, I believe, an EP. So even before '08. But
Hmm.
I was sort of I was very interested in all kinds of creativity, like I was saying, lapidary class, right? I was dabbling in different things. Whereas in 2006 on, that became the time when I was focusing on being an artist and a singer songwriter and really trying to develop and hone that craft.
Hmm. And uh, once you became ill, and as you have said, got through the acute phase of your illness and started rehabilitation and relearning the things that fell away when the disease overcame you, what in you knew that you needed to turn to creativity, or what was the spark that said, this is the way? What was the genesis of all this? Do you know?
I I can't answer as a specific. I can
Mhm.
say there was one incident that was wild to me, which was I was seeing a craniosacral therapist. For those who may not know, somebody who kind of focuses on more holistic and a different alternative, way of being. So when I sought out this cranial sacral, it's because I was having so many problems and muscle weakness issues that I was trying to look outside of Western medicine for some responses and help. And this craniosacral therapist didn't even let me continue my thought. And my thought was, I'm putting so much emphasis on creating an art. Is that emphasis I should put into healing instead? And she wouldn't let me finish. She's like, art and creativity are your healing.
It is one and the same.
But here,
You are
you know,
talking about the same thing.
but okay, there's this huge, profound thing that happened for me. And we can either talk about it now while it's really exciting and I want to talk about it, or we can talk about it a little bit later.
Jump right in.
Okay, so this is the missing piece. If I were to kind of sum up surviving to thriving for me, it's this physical and mental transformations that happen when my body no longer could be doing what it was doing, like going from total independence to dependence at the hospital, right? To the thriving that I'm talking about. So then finding creativity and transcending illness through art and eventually through attitude, which we can talk about. But the missing piece was really this wellness and trying to understand that healing my body, this whole physical element, and trying to do things to improve my mobility and my stamina and my energy and all of these things that are my physical. That's where I was putting energy. I'm going to Western medicine. I'm getting treatments. I was doing infusions monthly. I'm doing all these things to help my physical body. So that recognition of, wait a minute, this whole thing, for me has to be about something bigger than just the physical body. And that shift didn't happen until way later, and I just want to note that now because that was a huge missing piece.
Yeah. The sort of goes to what this podcast is all about, that whether or not I am ever healthy again, I can be well.
I love that. Yes. Right.
Join me again tomorrow for part 3 of my interview with Lise Snyderman. And if you have comments or questions, please leave them. And until we're together again, thanks for being here and be well.